teams are out for the URC final, and we've got one big name in and one big name missing out. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. Okay, so in this one, we are going to look at the teams that have been picked for each of the finalists, and then we're going to talk briefly about the players who are in there, who's missing, and then we're going to look at some stats both for the teams and for individuals, and maybe some things to look out for as well in the final. We won't be going over how the teams got here, what the form is, that kind of stuff, because I've already done a preview that includes those. So if you need that kind of stuff, go and check that one out. Okay, so we'll just quickly recap though, the game itself. So this game, it's on Saturday, which is, as I'm recording it, it's tomorrow, and it is a 5 p.m. kickoff. It's at Loftus Versfeld, and it is the Vodacom Bulls versus Glasgow Warriors. So second versus fourth seeds coming into this, and first off the bat, I backed the Bulls early on in the week, basically because I think home advantage with the crowd there. There was actually some very interesting comments on that as well. The fact that it's not that long ago that Glasgow, was it like round 16 or something, that Glasgow actually went there. So it's not that far back that they're there, and they're playing at altitude as well. So maybe compared to a Leinster team who we talked about in the build up, where a lot of the Leinster team have never been to, until their semi-final defeat, had never been to South Africa in a Leinster jersey, and therefore had never represented Leinster at altitude at Loftus either. And maybe that stood against them, but the Glasgow team have been there, and people were saying they were competitive in the recent meeting. They were to an extent, because you have to remember that the Bulls had a pretty healthy lead, and then Glasgow start coming back. So sometimes that can happen. A team has a lead and they take the foot off the gas, and suddenly the opposition start looking a lot better. Not saying that's necessarily what happened, but we didn't see Glasgow weren't pushing for the win at the end. They basically got there to the point where they got 2 bonus points out of the game, but that's where that's kind of the level they were at. They were going for that second bonus point, the losing bonus point, rather than going for the win in that game. But we're going to talk about the teams. So let me just pull them up here just to find where I actually saved them. That's always going to be fun. But yeah, as I said, we got one kind of big inclusion and one big, not necessarily exclusion, but somebody missing out due to injury. So there we are. And okay, so I'm going to start with home teams, the Bulls, obviously. So first of all, we're just going to run down through the team. Then we'll talk about who's in and who's out, etc. So front row is Steenkamp, Grobelaar and Lowe. Second row, Vermaak and Norge. Back row, Van Staden, Lowe and Hanekom. The halfbacks, Papier and Hussen. Left wing, Arendse. Centres, Vorster and Creel. Right wing, Peterson. And then fullback is Williams. On the bench then we have Van der Merwe, Matanzima, Klopper, Ludwig, Carr, Berger, Smith and Smith. Okay, so that's the Bulls team. Now we will first look at the Glasgow team, and then we'll talk about who's in and who's out of both the teams as well. So Glasgow team, front row, Batty, Matthews and Fagerson. Second row is Cummings and Gray. Then we have Matt Fagerson in the back row with Darge and Dempsey. Halfbacks, Horn and Jordan. Left wing, Stain. Centres, Tuipulotu and Jones. Right wing is Cancellieri. And then at fullback is Mackay. On the bench, you got Turner, Macbeth, Campbell, Williamson, Ferry, Venter, Doby, and Weir. Okay, so first of all, the Bulls team. So what are the differences from their semi-final? First of all, unchanged in the pack. It's always good when a team can do that. It shows, good continuity and good confidence, I think, going into a game as well. Couple of changes in the backs. First of all, Kurtley Aronson has recovered and he's back on the wing, so he's a major plus for them. Then we have Devin Williams is switching from wing to full back because Willie LaRue is out with a head injury. He picked that up. It was a late hit from Baird against Leinster. It was kind of right on the cusp there, really, in terms of when he hit him. And unfortunately, it's we see a lot of it in rugby. But yeah, LaRue got a head injury out of that and didn't recover, and that's sad, really sad for the Bulls, but also I think sad for the final, because Willie, he played brilliantly in that semi-final, and I'm sure he would have lit up the final as well. So we got, as I said, Devin Williams is switching to to fullback from wing with Kurtley Aronson coming in there. Then we have on the bench, Zach Berger comes onto the bench in place of Keegan Jonas. Then Glasgow, also unchanged in the pack, but actually unchanged in their entire starting 15 as well. No changes in the backs for them. Then on the bench, we have Nathan Macbeth coming onto the bench for Murphy Walker. And because of that, then Ollie Keble will cover tight head this week. He covered loose head, I think, in the semi-final. Then Duncan Weir is on there for Ross Thompson. And I think I'm right in saying that it's a 5-3 split for... Is it? 5-3 split for the Bulls and a 6-2 split for Glasgow. I think I'm right in that. I'll check later if I'm wrong. I'll put an addendum on the end of the video, but I think that's right. So those are our two teams. Let's have a look a little bit, more in depth at them. So first, again, with the Bulls, front row, that's the front row that dominated that Leinster front row. That Leinster front row, which is pretty much the Ireland starting front row. Steenkamp and Lowe, excellent in the scrum, and really got on top pretty much all the way through the game as well, and made it so difficult for Leinster in the scrum. Then Grobler doing his part in there as well, but also doing his part in terms of line outs, the maul as well. And we didn't see a maul try, I think, from them, but I think maybe in this final, we got two teams who are, for me, best two maul attacks in the URC. There isn't even like a question, I think, over that. And when we look at stats later, you'll see why I think that, and pretty much I think why it is the case. So, Grobler and then Van der Merwe, when he comes on, both going to be very important for that, because Bulls are going to want to, if they get the chance, both teams are going to go to the corner. They're going to be using the maul. Accuracy, first of all, in the throw is going to be important. Communication from the hooker to his, to the lifters and to the jumpers in terms of what's happening, etc., what the call is. That's also going to be very important. And then obviously the timing of the jump, making sure that you're throwing it straight, because we saw a few in both of the semi-finals, I think, being given as not straight as well. And depending on how the scrum is going, that could be a positive for the Bulls, given how well their scrum went against Leinster. But it can happen one week to another. Suddenly you're on top last week and now you're the ones struggling. So we'll see how that actually goes. But if they are even on top in the scrum, they'd still rather, I think, not have to go to a scrum, because obviously it's going to be opposition's feed, and there's the potential to win a penalty, but there's also the potential for the opposition to get the ball out and clear it, and therefore the chance that you had, which is maybe kicking into the 22 or into the corner, where you had that line out that you threw skew, that chance then is gone. So I think it's going to be very important for both teams. So Grobler is going to be one of the key men in the final. Then the second row, You got Rune Vermaak and Rune Nortje there as well, the captain. And again, Nortje is another one of those guys who, we talked about Hanekom last week, but Nortje is another guy who, outside of URC, you wouldn't necessarily hear of him all that much because he's not there in terms of being right up there for Springboks, etc. But it doesn't mean that he's not an exceptional player, and there's a reason why he's the captain of the Bulls, because the guy, he's one of those guys where whether he's getting picked for the Springboks or not, when he's out there, if he's going against the other like South African locks, he's still going to give those guys a game, and he's definitely going to give the Glasgow second row things to think about definitely in this game as well. Then back row we got Marco van Staden, Elric Rowe, and Cameron Hanekom. Hanekom outstanding last week against Leinster, but the entire back row went well. It wasn't just him, just he was obviously the standout player. He was just so good. But I thought Van Staden did some really good work, especially around the breakdown and also kind of on the fringes of the breakdown as well. And then Low too, just getting through a mountain of work there. Halfbacks then, I think for these guys, because we have no Willemse, or sorry, not Willemse, Willie Leroux, no Willie Leroux, it means that there's going to be a bit more on these guys in terms of playmaking, I think, because Leroux was, was taking a big share of the kicking duties, and also, he was the guy putting in the clever cross kicks and stuff like that as well. Not to say that Houston wasn't doing that too, but Leroux seemed to be really on it last week. So it means Papier and Houston, maybe a bit more kicking from them just in terms of the workload. It probably means that we're going to see a few more box kicks than we did, against Leinster, which is not too bad, because that final try that they got from Papier was from just a pinpoint box kick that he put up as well. So that could really work out for them. And the thing with box kicks is you've got to get that distance right. It's got to be to the point where, first of all, that you're not causing your own team to all be offside, which we've seen at times. Not necessarily from Papier, but I'm just saying in general with boxing. Then not too long either, to the point where your own players can't get there and compete, and suddenly you're giving the opposition a chance to run the ball back against a disjointed, misaligned defense. So Papier, I think his box kicks are going to be another one of the keys. Houston, he's obviously got that all-around game of, he can pass it, he can run it, he can run support lines, and he's got that kicking game, kicking from the tee as well. So he won't mind having to step up a little bit, and take on that extra responsibility with no Willie Leroux there. And I think maybe he'll relish that too. But at the same time, when it's a final, you do like to have a few more kicking options just to take the pressure off your main guy, because when it's like that, it means that the opposition can target a certain player a little bit more when they know, well, this guy's going to do most of the kicking. So it'd be interesting to see if we're going to see, maybe Williams taking on a bit, kicking. We didn't see that much from him in the semi-final on the wing, or maybe even the wingers, Arendse and Peterson. We know Vorster put in a brilliant kick for the first of Peterson's tries as well. So, he's obviously got a boot on him too, and maybe an option, maybe just launching long ones, maybe straight down the middle or just into space at some point as well in the game. And then on the wings, you got Curtly Arendse there. The guy was in amazing form in the quarterfinal. I'm sure he's going to be raring to get back out there. He's seen Peterson, nab a couple of tries in the semi-final. He's going to want to go out there and show, listen, I'm still the main man. I'm going to get a couple of tries maybe in the final. Then that midfield, I thought, went really well. Vorster and Creel, they link up very well, and Voxel as well. He likes to play on the edge too. We saw against Leinster, getting out there in the tram lines, and he's not, he's not afraid to carry out there, and then he knows we saw it against Leinster. He's got the option of he can carry into contact and just make sure that he doesn't, go into touch. He can look for his support on his inside, and he can put those kicks in as well, which means that the defense they can't be too gung-ho in terms of trying to shut him down if he does get into space out there as well. Creel beside him has been excellent through the season too. Then right wing we got Peterson, a couple of tries last week. He did get a yellow card, but really redeemed himself in that second half, and his ability in the air as well, I thought was excellent. Like for that second try, the way he just got up there, scooped the ball, plucked it out of the sky, and then landed and was straight into his stride. There was no kind of, he wasn't thinking about where's the impact coming from or anything like that. It was just like, I'm getting this ball. When I land, I'm going to be in space, and I'm going straight for the line. And that's what we can see there. And then Devin Williams there at full back. So it always happens. Somebody has to slot in a full back. Opposition are going to be trying to pepper bombs at him, at the start. And it can go one way or the other, right? First option, which obviously Glasgow are looking for, is maybe, he knocks on one or two early on and gets a little bit nervous about things before maybe settling in later on, or they're just going to keep trying to exploit it, or he catches one and it's not the best kick and slaloms his way, through a few defenders before popping the ball off, and eventually then Bulls are either like right there at the line or over the line scoring. So that's kind of the the double-edged sword that you have with trying to test someone who's slotting in at fullback. So he should expect certainly to get some airmail, as it were, in the opening quarter of the game at least, and then maybe Glasgow will have to rethink their tactics if he's dealing with it pretty well. On the bench then got Akker van der Merwe, who himself and Grobbelaar, basically you could switch them around whichever way you want. They're that close to each other in terms of ability, and he'll definitely, whatever about Grobbelaar looking to get over for a maul try, Van der Merwe will be absolutely chomping at the bit to get out there and try and do that. Then on the bench you've got Matanzima and Klopper. So their job is, if the Bulls are on top in the scrum early on, they've got to come on and they've got to continue that, because we saw with Glasgow struggled against Munster in the scrum, but when they brought on the replacements, things went a lot better for them. So it's gonna be interesting to see if we have that similar switch in the scrum, if the Bulls are indeed on top, in the opening kind of 50 minutes or so of the game. Then we have Ludwig and Carr on there as well, and those guys gonna come on, and I think again, decent shifts. In terms of like against Leinster, it was kind of a maintaining job that they had coming on. There was no need to really find something to win the game at that stage. Like they felt like they had Leinster at arm's length, and they could keep them there for as long as they wanted. That was kind of their dominance. Those guys come on and they continue that, which is good to see. Sometimes you want your bench to come on and you want them to lift your team and get you to go again. Other times you just want it to come on and slot in, and you hardly notice that a change has been made. And that was the kind of game that was in the semi-final, and that's the job that those guys did. We got Zach Berger coming on to the bench as well. So he obviously, new on the bench there. He's going to give them different options on there as well for when Papier comes off. Sorry, it'd be interesting to see how long Papier actually stays on. Is he going to be playing like 60 minutes, or is it 70, or is it going to be one of these ones where you try and keep him on and then only for injury, but I'd imagine that Berger's is probably going to get at least the last 10 minutes of the game. Then you have both Smiths on there, so Chris and Cornell Smith coming on too, and again they kind of did the same last week in terms of just coming on, slotting in, and keeping things going, and that's really what the Bulls needed. Both, though, definitely have that ability to come on and to change the game for the Bulls if they need that. So there's some on the bench there. There's definitely some players who, if the Bulls need to change, the picture or whatever, or change how things are going, wrestle some momentum back. They definitely have a few options there on the bench for that. So that is our Bulls team. Now let's again go through the Glasgow team. So front row is Batty, Matthews, and Fagerson. Matthews top try scorer in the URC this season, and depending on it looks like he's probably going to end up top scorer for the entire season. Obviously, the regular season's already done that, but he's I think 2 tries ahead of the nearest player from the Bulls. So depending on how things go, maybe he could be tied for that. He's obviously going to be wanting to get another try himself, or another couple of tries if he can, not only to help his team to win the trophy, which is obviously the main thing on his mind, but whatever players say about things, it's always nice to have a little bit of kind of individual award along with the team award. It'll be, I think, in terms of if they lose the final and he ends up top try scorer and even gets a try in the final, it'll be scant kind of consolation for him that he's got that. He'll tell you straight away, I think I'd rather swap that for actually a winner's medal. But if they do win it and he has that too, well, that's a big bonus for him. But these guys, against Munster again, they did struggle at scrum time, and that performance is going to have to be better because this Bulls front row have already shown that they can really put you under a lot of pressure and do a real kind of thorough examination of your abilities in that front row. So these guys, they're going to be switched on. They're going to have to look at what went wrong against Munster and try to come out on the front foot in the scrum on this one. In terms of line out, they probably feel like both lineouts are really good from these teams, but they probably think they have a little bit of an edge. But Bulls has shown that they can get up there, they can disrupt the lineout, and suddenly a lineout that has looked brilliant all season can go to absolute crap. So again, very much like the Bulls, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Matthews' shoulders. He's got to hit his guy in those first few lineouts. You wonder whether how his approach is going to be. Is he going to kind of say, okay, a couple of safe ones, let's go to the front and let's just make sure that we win it. And less likely that obviously if you're going to the middle of the lineout, or especially the tail of the lineout, you got the chances of overthrowing, skewed lineout, and also giving the opposition time to get somebody up in the air and to compete as well. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting seeing the first couple of lineouts from both teams, how they both approach it, because it's almost one of these like double bluff, if you like, where both teams might be thinking, well, they might want to go for like a secure lineout and go to the front, so therefore we're going to jump at the front in the off chance that that's exactly what they're going to do, and we can get up there, maybe disrupt the first line out and put a little bit of doubt in their mind. And then, so that would be the first kind of, reading your bluff. And then you'd have the double bluff, which would be, well, if we think that we're going to do that against them, maybe they're thinking the same against us. So therefore our first line out, instead of going to the front, we're going to go to the middle or the back. And for me, just thinking of all the kind of scenarios you can go through with that, I'm glad I'm not calling lineouts, put it that way. But yeah, it's another just fascinating, I think, area of the game really, in terms of how do you decide where to go in terms of getting that momentum in your lineup, because it's a final, and momentum in each of these different areas is going to feed into the overall momentum of the game as well. Second row, then you got Scott Cummings and Richie Gray. Gray obviously wanted to go to the bin again. We had two Bulls in the bin against Leinster, and we had Richie Gray in the bin against Munster as well. But he kind of, for him, it was kind of a collective thing where the rest of his team gave away a bunch of penalties, and he happened to be the guy who kind of was the final straw. So he got to go to the bin. So he'll be hoping that he doesn't get the same kind of outcome as well this week. But these two guys, decent second row there, both good options in the lineup, especially obviously Richie Gray, and then Cummings probably a little bit more in terms of in the loose and stuff, in terms of his contribution to the team. Then on the back row, then you got Ferguson, Darge, and Dempsey, which on paper seems like a really decent back row, and they went so well against Munster as well. You've got you got Dempsey there for your carrying. You got Darge there to get in there, maybe win your turnovers, and then Ferguson to do a little bit of a hybrid thing, do some carrying and get in there and do some clearing out at the rucks as well. So it looks like a nice balance for them. They're up against though an outstanding back row, and obviously they've got to deal with Hanekom as well. So Hanekom, you're wondering then, is it going to be? Are they going to have someone that's maybe going to try and chop him, and then you get Darge over the top? And if they're going to do that, does that mean then that the Bulls are looking out for that, and they're going to have somebody on standby to actually clear Darge out when that does happen and prevent him from getting to the ball? So again, a little bit of cat and mouse maybe in that area. Halfbacks then, George Horn loves to snipe, loves to go quickly anytime free kicks or penalties as well. So Bulls definitely have to be switched on for that. But Papier as well, he's not, he's not a slouch when it comes to quick thinking either. So maybe both teams are going to be like that. Tom Jordan, for him, definitely trying to put his team in the right areas of the pitch. So his kicking is going to be, I think, key in terms of the Warriors actually playing in the right area of the field. You don't really want to be starting whether you're in possession or not, you don't want to be playing like most of the first quarter in your own half. You want to make sure you have at least some minutes in the opposition half, and maybe ideally under 22 as well. And early on, when teams are feeling out each other, that kicking duel can be a key factor in that as well. So how he kicks and how he kind of directs his backs as well in terms of the response to the Bulls kicking is going to be important throughout the game, but certainly in the early stages. Then Kyle Steyn, captain out there on the left wing, I think he's really good at leading his troops, and he gets in there, he gets stuck in, and he's gonna want to get opportunities, in that Bulls 22 to show what he can do as well. He's really good at the hard carries, and then you've got to get support in and around him as well for potential offloads, or ideally what you really want is you want Tuipulotu and Jones making the breaks, and then somebody like Steyn there on their shoulder to go and finish, because Steyn, he was there in a one-on-one, and he's more likely, I think, to get the ball down and make sure it's a try. Not guaranteed. I think we're going to see in this game as well some really good last-ditch defense. I thought both teams, in terms of their scramble behind, the front line of defense was really good, and I think both are going to have to do that as well, because we saw both teams as well getting in behind their opposition and and scoring pretty well when they broke the line. So being able to execute that again themselves and get to scramble, whoever can do those again, there's going to be a little bit of an edge in the final for that. It feels like it's going to be a final that's going to go back and forth as well between them. But that centre partnership, Tuipulotu and Jones, both now firing, which is great for Glasgow because they look a much better team when those two are working in tandem. I talked about like at the start of the season and even previously for Scotland as well, where it felt like they were both kind of doing their own thing, and weren't working as well as they were as a partnership. But it seems that they've found that kind of that chemistry again between them, and they're going to need that to give them every chance against this Bulls team, because again I do think the Bulls are the favourites for the game. Then you got Sebastian Cancellieri, finishes try off very well off that Hugh Jones break, and that's one of the things that you want from him, at both wings really for Glasgow, is that finishing ability. You don't know how many chances you're going to get in the final, and you don't want to be leaving points out there because your winger got blasted into touch or poor handling or whatever. It is going to happen to one of the teams. It's just one of those things, right? Looks like it's a nail on try, and there's just going to be some amazing covering tackle that just about gets a toe into touch or wherever it is before the ball is grounded or dislodges the ball or wherever it is. I think we're going to see at least one covering tackle like that from one of these teams. Then Josh Mackay, been really impressed with him this year. Just his ability when he collects, when he's collecting kicks, it feels like sometimes you can tell with someone covering the backfield that when they collect the kick, as they catch the ball, they're still kind of weighing up their options in terms of, am I going to run it? Am I going to kick it? If I'm going to run it, which direction am I going, etc. But Mackay seems to generally have already kind of done his scanning, and he knows what he's going to do, and he's so good at running balls back and targeting where that space is. And when he targets the space there, then if he gets support in there, I think it was for the Hugh Jones break, right? I think he ran the ball back. But we've seen him before, or a lot of times during the season, making those breaks. And it's all about then, the other players on the team, the likes of Tuipulotu, Jones, Cancellieri, Stain, etc. They've got to be able to get there in support for any offload or wherever that's coming as well, so that what you don't want with someone like Mackay is that they make the break and the support is maybe a few meters back from where it needs to be. He gets taken down, somebody gets over the ball, and it's a penalty. And what was a very positive thing for your team suddenly has you not just going backwards, but now you're going backwards and the opposition have the ball potentially in your territory as well. So Mackay is going to be important in terms of running the ball back, but the amount of support that he actually receives as well, and the anticipation of potential line breaks as well, is going to be important, I think, for Glasgow. Onto the bench then. So you got George Turner. I think I'm pretty sure this is his last game for Glasgow, right? I think he's off to, I think somebody said he's off to Japan. So definitely come on, and we've seen in terms of what he's able to do in the loose. I think all around game in the loose is probably better than Matthews, although Matthews has that ability of just at the back of the maul, reading how things are going, knowing when to come off the maul, and having that the skill set as well and the technique to get nice and low and make sure he's giving himself the best chance to get over and actually score the try. Turner, not so good at that part of the game. Not saying that he can't score tries from the back of the mauls or wherever, just that Matthews seems seems to have certainly an edge over him on that. Then Macbeth and Keble definitely gonna whatever's happening in the scrum, I suspect that Glasgow probably will be under a little bit of pressure. How much pressure we don't know, but definitely gonna have to come on and try and give some kind of response in that as well. Or even if Glasgow are going well in the scrum, they've got a big responsibility then to come on and make sure that that continues as well. So I think replacement front rows have become more and more important, especially now that we're seeing where teams are. It used to be a case of whoever your starting front row were, they basically played on until they could hardly walk around the field anymore, and then you took them off and you put the new guys on. Now it's a case of you tell them to go hard in the first half. Second half, then they've had a little bit of a rest. Tell them to go hard for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and they're going to get replaced. Not the entire front row. Sometimes it is the entire front row, but most of them, that's what's going to happen to them. So these guys are going to get decent game time, and they're going to have to be able to deliver when they come on as well. Then, we've got Williamson, Ferry, and Ferry there as well. Got to come on. They got to slot in well, and I'm not sure in terms of coming on and maybe like lifting Glasgow or not. But again, I think they're kind of maintainers as they go on. I think Henko Venter, when he comes on, certainly can be someone who can give them that little bit extra impetus, in terms of just impact that he's going to bring from the bench. Then you got Jamie Doby on there as well. Another one where you kind of think, well, how much time is he gonna get? And it might be maybe last 10 or 15 minutes, I think, of the game. Duncan Weir then gives you options off the bench in terms of if you want to bring on maybe a second playmaker instead of maybe like for someone like Mackay, where maybe you want to play a little more tight, you want to maybe kick a little bit more and play for territory as well. He's certainly a great option to bring on there. So those are the look at the teams themselves. We're going to look now at the stats, but before I do, I just want to point something out because I thought it was very nice. Let me again. You'd think I'd have some of this stuff ready, right? But why would I do that? But we had a comment on. Oh, here it is here. So it's from. I'm definitely going to butcher the name because YouTube names are really handles are really difficult to work out whether it's supposed to be like words run together or it's all one word. But it's Summer Ledisley 9987 put a brilliant, I thought, amazing pun in the comments of the other preview, and it was basically, will he play or will he no? That is the question. There's the rub. And yeah, that question about Willie LaRue, was he going to play or not? We got our answer now, and it could be that Willie not playing will make things a little bit more even between the teams. But we've seen before as well, sometimes a big name is missing, guy has to go in and fill in there and has like one of his best games ever, and then is like ends up being the player of the match in a final. So that's a possibility there as well. But let's have a look at some stats from the teams. So first thing, points throughout the season, the Bulls 669 to 546 for Glasgow. So both high scoring teams, but the Bulls put up some really big scores this season. They have a lot of games where they scored 40 plus points into the 50s as well. And then in terms of tries, 88 tries to 80. So the Bulls are number one in the URC, and I think Glasgow number 3. And so you would expect if these two, when we saw them meet, like what was it now, 3-4 weeks ago, there certainly was tons of tries in the game. Let's see if this one's going to be a tighter affair though. Finals tend to be, but sometimes in the final, it starts out tight, floodgates open, both teams just popping off tries all over the place. So I think whatever it is, though, I think it's going to be a very entertaining final. Points conceded then 433 to 353. Clean breaks 159 for the Bulls, 183 for Glasgow. So just looking at that in terms of in terms of how many tries they've gotten as well, like, obviously not all tries come from clean breaks, but you would suspect that the Bulls probably have a slightly better conversion rate on their clean breaks compared to Glasgow. Offloads then 183 to 172. So both teams, you're basically like, what now? We are 20 games in, right? So you're looking at an average of 9 offloads per game from the Bulls and an average of 8.5 from Glasgow. So pretty close on that score. Both teams like an offload. And I think also the important thing is the offloads that they give, for the most part, are ones where they want to, they're not under pressure. They're offloads that somebody has already decided, I'm going to take the contact. I can see where my support is and I'm going to offload to that support. It's not one of these where, sometimes you see it, somebody gets hit, gets knocked back, and they just kind of fling the ball away. I don't think we'll see too many of those from either team. And I think if we do as well, both teams are really good, in terms of, if the opposition does do that, they're very good at exploiting it as well, getting to that ball first, and suddenly, somebody is throwing a silly offload. Now the opposition have the ball, they're in behind, and potentially it's a score. Tackle success then 86% for the Bulls is kind of at a pass mark for the URC. 91% for Glasgow is excellent, but they're going to have to be up at that level again, I think, in this final to keep this Bulls team as quiet as they possibly can. Line of success then 89% from the Bulls is excellent, and 86% from Glasgow is fairly decent. Scrum success 92% for the Bulls, 95% from Glasgow. So maybe that against Munster, it was a bit of an aberration for that Glasgow front row, and maybe they're going to get a bit more parity in the game itself. Turnovers won then 123 for the Bulls, and it was a decent return. 138 for Glasgow, though certainly have a little bit of an edge on that side of things. But then turnovers lost, 236 for the Bulls and 247 for Glasgow. So Glasgow, they might have the edge in terms of turning the ball over, but in a positive way, but they also have the most in the negative way as well. On to players then. Leading point scorers, I think, as you would expect, basically it's the guys kicking from the tee. So Huson with 141 and Horner with 76. Leading try scorers, Akker van der Merwe with 12, who's coming off the bench for the Bulls, definitely looking to get a try or two to catch Johnny Matthews on 14. So well, I wonder, I'm not a betting person, but there must be some really good odds for these two boys scoring a try in this final. Successful carries then. Eric Lowe with 89. We talked a lot about Hanekom last week, but Lowe definitely gets through his fair share of carrying the ball as well. So and that's important, I think, in a back row as well, is that it was just one guy carrying successfully in the back row. It's a lot easier for the opposition to kind of mark that guy. But when you have someone like Lowe there as well, it makes the impact from someone like Hanekom more like better for the team, simply because you can't be like double tackling both of these guys. You've got to try and pick one, and then if you don't stop it dead there, then the other guy is gonna make space. Henko Venter, 71 carries for Glasgow, as I talked about. He has that potential to bring that impact off the bench, get them some go forward ball, maybe if they've been struggling for that early on in the game, and maybe get that little bit of front foot, and suddenly if you have that front foot, retreating defense, the backs then can look a lot better. You've got options of kicking over the top as well, and maybe condensing that space there for the Bulls. So I think he is going to be important from the bench. Clean breaks then, Curtly Aronson with 17. So, definitely happy from the Bulls' point of view for him being back in, and Calzinieri with 18 for Glasgow. Obviously a recent returnee to their team as well. Defenders beaten then, Papier with 41. We talked about before the fact that he's very quick thinking. It's those snipes, be it from the base of a ruck, from the back of a scrum, or running good support lines, going quick from free kicks, from penalties, etc. You've got to keep your eye on him. Him and Horn, they're both kind of live wires. And then for Glasgow, you got Josh Mackay with 52. So again, the return of that ball, the Bulls, the accuracy in their kicking, it's going to have to be, spot on in terms of just not giving this guy, any kind of chance to run it back into space or to find mismatches in your defensive line when he does run it back. Meters gained then, Eric Lowe with 853. Huge numbers for the Bulls. And then Josh Mackay, 1,163, just massive numbers for Glasgow. So you can see how devastating he can be running the ball back, and also Lowe as well. Another one, if you don't stop him early, he's going to make meters after contact. And once somebody like him starts making meters after contact, it means in terms of your defense isn't set, and you're more vulnerable. Offloads then, Hanekom with 26. And that's the double threat with someone like him, is that he can make those meters, but he's also looking for the offload. He's the ball is not going to die with him. He's not going to take it to ground, and then you get a little bit of a reset when when the ball has to be recycled. He's going to look for those offloads, and if he has support there, if he has somebody like Lowe in support, after a hard carry, suddenly your defense is in all kinds of trouble then. And then if they get the ball, quick ball out from there, out to the backs, there's a mismatch out wide, and the Bulls are over in the corner. That's how important people like Lowe and Hanekom can be in a team. Then offloads on the Glasgow side, 21 from Mackay. So again, something very similar. Obviously Mackay is more evasive than the back rowers that we're talking about from the Bulls, but still it's that idea of contact is coming, where's my support? I don't think it's in terms of being top class players, making meters, when you get in behind, it's no longer I won't say acceptable, but in terms of just top level play now is being able to spot where your support is and not run away from them, and then if you can, pop that offload as well, and it turns what is a decent break into a try scoring opportunity. On defense then, number of tackles, Eric Lowe with 215. Guy just puts in big shifts for the Bulls. Rory Darge there with 178, and some of that obviously is opposition thinking, well, Darge is the guy who's going to get over the ball, so let's run the ball at him and make him make the tackle. But he's a good all-rounder like that, where he can make his tackle and he can pop up and he can be ready to, if it's there, to go in and compete for the ball. If not, he's ready for the next ruck to be in there, maybe second, and try and get over the ball as well. Then turnovers 1, Hanekom with 15, and Scott Cummings with 11 for Glasgow. So we didn't talk too much about Cummings in terms of his threat at the breakdown, but certainly it's going to be there, and I think breakdown is going to be very competitive between these two teams. And I think both of them are teams that when they're going forward and they got momentum, they kind of almost avoid breakdowns or like rucks, simply because of the offloading games, right? They're trying to move that ball, and then when you do have a breakdown, when you've got a ruck there, you've got threats coming in from both sides. to get in there and try and get over the ball. So when you do have breakdowns, I think ball security, your 9 being there, getting there quickly in case there's pressure coming from the opposition, and to get that ball away quickly is going to be very important as well, because even if you're under pressure at the breakdown with a very aggressive defense, if your 9 is quick enough to get in there, and there's no point in just running in and picking the ball up and not knowing where you're going to get it. So, it's very important. 9 gets in there, he knows where the ball is going to go, and he whips it away, and he gets it off there. And what can happen then is that opposition, they've committed players in there, so maybe they have 1 or 2 extra players in there to try and drive over and get at that ball, but the 9 gets in, he whips it away. Suddenly now your attack has 1 or 2 extra players in it, and therefore the space somewhere, and you've given it hopefully to the 10 or to one of your centers or wherever, and they've already identified where that space is, and they're going to try and get that there as quickly as possible, whether that's via through the hands, or crossfield kicks, or they've seen there's actually a gap at the middle, they're going to go for themselves, or they're going to draw somebody and make the gap even wider. But that's what can happen with aggressive defense. But when you've got 2 good scrum halves, the way we have for both of these teams, that aggression at the breakdown sometimes can count against you as well. But that's pretty much our look at the teams for this final. I still, looking at these 2 teams, I've watched so many of the games this year. I've seen so many of these players do fantastic things all the way through the season as well. And it makes it very hard in terms of just stacking you up against each other and thinking, well, they're both excellent teams, but who's going to come out on top? And again, I think it comes down to the fact that the Bulls, they're going to be playing at Loftus. It's going to be full. It's 51,000. The vast majority are going to be, screaming for the Bulls. I think that edges them over, over Glasgow in terms of making them favourites for that. So I'm going to stick with the Bulls for the win. Let me know if I'm right or wrong.